Chapter 16. I sat with my back against the only column in the portico not already claimed by another migrant. Even that late at night, the humidity was dense. The mildewed wall felt cold and clammy through my shirt. Chips of dirty white paint littered the ground, mingled with scraps of metal, discarded food wrappers, and a doll's head. Elena spread out her shawl, curled up, and put her head on my leg. She let out one loud yawn and within seconds fell into a deep sleep. Next to us was a dented, rusted-out oil drum. The stink of old urine crept up around the other side of the barrel. No wonder no one else had chosen this spot. My right leg had already fallen asleep under the weight of Elena's head. I sighed and tried to stretch out my free left leg. We could not afford to oversleep anyway. The bus left at 6 a.m. A feeble street lamp cast a dim light into the first few feet of the portico. One couple, their arms around each other, whispered quietly. A drunk lay in the far corner. He mumbled non-stop to himself. At least 10 others slept in the shadows cast by the columns. Most of them, again, were men, alone. A rat strolled across the portico, taking its time. 3 or 4 others followed, their long tails stuck out behind them. The rats did not seem afraid of us humans. This was their home. Had I really looked hard enough for a place to sleep? Anywhere would have been better than this. Another rat ran right over Elena's shoe. Maybe the rats were a bad omen. I was dead tired, but I needed to stay awake. There was more than one kind of ratero in the world. I touched the money pouch strapped to my waist. I needed every peso to take us home, to pay off Juanito, to perhaps, if I was lucky, start my trip all over. I pulled up my shirt, took off the pouch, and stuffed it behind the barrel. It would be safe there until morning. The stink would keep everyone away. The only thing I had to do was stay awake. An hour passed, then another. Elena did not move. The rats came and went. I counted them. I named them. Juanito, Juanito 1, Juanito 2, Morales, Morales 1, Morales 2. I made up stories about them. In every one, the rats died horrible, gory deaths. I slapped my face and pinched my arm really hard. I tried to remember every soccer game I had ever played in order and the scores. I listed the kids in my class, first alphabetically, then by their height, then by how mensos they were. There were the dumb ones, and then there were the ones who just acted dumb. I lined them up both ways. I thought again about how angry I was with Elena, how she had messed up everything. Even that did not work to keep me awake. My eyes closed again and again. I looked around the portico into the darkness of the shadows. All I could hear was scurrying paws and the soft snoring of someone across the open space. Rats or no rats, I was dead tired. We would have to get up soon anyway. For sure, I would wake up at the littlest sound. It would not hurt to sleep for a few minutes, would it? A vicious kick in my side jolted me awake. I groaned in pain and rolled over to see Elena sitting up straight, her eyes wide with terror. 2 figures hovered over me, their faces hidden by the shadow of a column. "Wake up!" one growled. I could not see them clearly, but I saw the gun pointed at Elena's head. They jerked her roughly to her feet. Before I could stand, another kick landed squarely in my stomach. I doubled over in pain, grabbing my middle. "What do you want?" I gasped, but I knew what they wanted. These muggers probably came through here every night, taking whatever they could find. No one answered my question. Instead, they pushed me to the ground again. Rough hands moved quickly up and down my body. The hands pulled Chewy's knife from my right pocket, along with the few pesos not in the pouch. The thief dug through my backpack, then threw it aside. The only thing he took was Lalo's soccer jersey. He touched the shiny fabric, then put it on. The shirt was now his. He rooted through Elena's string bag, opened the purse full of letters, and dumped them on the ground. He balled up the little cloth purse in disgust and threw it out into the darkness. Then he kicked at the letters and ground several of them with his heel into the earth. Elena groaned as if she had been kicked herself. "There's nothing here, Comilo. No tiene nada," he said with disdain. He gave me another half-hearted kick in the thigh. Colmillo moved into the night. He had acne, a bad case of it. Deep scars and pockmarks covered his whole face. A new set of pimples ran across his nose and cheeks. A scraggly thin mustache covered his upper lip. He wanted it to make him look older. It did not work. Colmillo was a kid, like me. A boy, un baboso, had tied up my sister and put a gun to her head. How could I have let this happen? I started to get up again, angry at myself. This time, Comila let me stand. I felt his partner behind me, his bad breath on my neck. So close I could smell the rancid sweat from his armpits. I looked around for help, but the portico was empty. Everyone had either been robbed or scared off. "Well, it does not matter," Comilo grinned meanly. Then I saw the source of his nickname. A shiny gold canine tooth glinted in the light of the street lamp. Comilo ran one finger lightly over Elena's cheek. She looked small, like a child. Her eyelids fluttered rapidly and then shut. Her knees gave way and she slipped to the ground in a little heap. "Wait! Please wait! I have money!" I said. The man behind me snorted, but Camillo squinted his eyes in interest. He had seen desperation before. He had gotten money from it before. Probably lots of money. "Really," I pleaded, "let us go. I will get it." "There," I nodded my head in the direction of the oil drum. "Look behind the barrel. You will find it. Take it all. Just leave us alone." Comilo motioned with the gun. His partner searched with one hand, pulled out the money pouch, and then the money. He held them out for Comilo to see and counted them quickly. Comilo's eyebrows raised in surprise. It was more than he expected. He reached for the pouch and stuffed it into his pocket. This time he would settle for quick, easy money. "Quite a estos piojosos de aquí," Camilo sneered. "Sometimes it's just so easy, it's not even fun." His partner threw me to the ground next to Elena. Their footsteps and their laughter echoed across the portico. We had been easy marks. I rolled over and threw up. We had lost our bus tickets and all of our money. Chewy's knife, Lalo's jersey, both gone. How much worse could things get? Chapter 17. "I'm ready to give up, Elena." I groaned, then leaned over and picked up my backpack, now completely empty, and tucked it under my arm. Maybe this trip just was not meant to be. Elena did not answer. She pulled herself up to her hands and knees and looked at Mama's letters scattered across the portico. A breeze had caught several and sent them out into the gutter. She picked up the one closest to her, blew the dirt off the paper, and looked at the words scrawled across the page. She held the letter open in both palms like an offering, then let it drift back down to the ground. Her eyes searched around in the dim light. She bent closer and then got down on her hands and the tips of her toes, moving like a crab across the dirt, her face close to the ground, examining every square centimeter as she went. Elena seemed to be looking for a particular letter, one that held special meaning for her, but she ignored each and every one she came across. Finally, she stooped even lower and picked up something from the ground. Oh, gracias a Dios, she murmured. Thank God. She stood and walked unsteadily toward me. In her hands was the cloth purse that had held Mamma's letters. Come on, Miguel. Let's get out of here. She looked around nervously. There was no sign of Camilo. There was no sign of anyone. Even the rats had disappeared. Let me help you with these. I picked up one letter close to my shoe, folded it along its well-creased lines, and held it out to Elena to stow in the bag. The letters seemed important to me now. They were the only things we had left. Forget them, Miguel. Please, let's just go, please. Elena reached down for my hand to help me up. It was already hot out, but her hand was cold and clammy. I groaned as I rose to my feet. Every part of me hurt. Are you sure, Elena? I asked. The letters. We have to get out of here, Elena cut me off. Elena must have been scared to death of Camilo. What else would make her leave her precious letters? She steered me out of the portico and out into the street. Dawn would come soon. The barest hint of light was visible to the east, and the sky had turned a deep blue. We turned the corner and entered the far side of the mercado, cutting behind to the row of stalls where we first hid from Morales. A few farmers who had come in to sell their mangoes and chiles unloaded their goods from the backs of burros. They looked at us curiously, then went back to their work. I looked down at my filthy, torn clothes. We probably looked like fugitives. The farmers would be better off if they pretended they had never seen us. Aquí, said Elena. She sat down on the ground in the very place where I had taken the money she had gotten from Juanito. Elena turned the cloth purse inside out and put it up to her mouth. She tore at the silky purple lining with her teeth again and again, trying to find a spot that would give way. A small tear finally appeared at one seam, now soaked with Elena's saliva. She lowered the bag, put one index finger into the tear, and ripped the lining apart. A cascade of dollar bills, fell out of the purse onto Elena's lap. She gathered them up and put them in my hands. This is the other half of the money Juanito gave me. Big tears rolled down Elena's cheeks. For once, she had a good reason to cry. She had 1,000 good reasons to cry. I sewed it into the lining, here, just in case. She pulled her knees up to her chin and hid her face. Embustera, I said, looking at the little treasure in my hands. Elena had been tricky. She had lied to me about how much money Juanito had given her, but she had taken the precaution of hiding half of it. I'll go back home, Miguel. I will go back myself, and you can go on ahead. She dried her tears with the back of one dirty hand. Maybe there is still enough money for you, if you are careful. She was serious. She was not whining. She meant it. I looked at my sister hard. Despite everything she had done wrong, she had won my admiration. I even admired her sneakiness. She had done everything without giving herself away. I would never had a clue about her intentions, not one of them. Then together we had escaped Morales and Camilo by the skin of our teeth. Whatever we did, we had to do it as brother and sister. We had been through too much to separate now. If Elena went to San Jacinto, I would go too. If I went north, I would take her with me. Still, there was not enough money to pay the coyote for both of us. We needed help. Look, Elena, I think we should call Papa and Mama. They will be worried anyway, and if worse comes to worse, we could ask Don Clemente for more money, I said. I did not tell her that he had given us all the money we wanted. All we had to do was ask. Elena looked down at her nails. They were chewed down so badly that several were bleeding. She knew she'd be in trouble for following me, But she nodded silently in agreement, so we made our way to the bus station, got a large pile of coins, and stood close together next to the payphone. I dialed the California phone number. Elena pumped in the coins, and the phone rang. It rang and rang and rang. A weary, unfamiliar female voice finally answered. No, Papa and Mama did not live there anymore. Yes, they had moved. No, she did not know the new number. Elena and I looked at each other, unsurprised. The family had to move too often, and often unexpectedly. Abuelita, one way or another, would have the new number, but Abuelita had no phone. Try Don Clemente, Elena suggested. Maybe Papa called him with their new number. Don Clemente's private number was first on the list of important information I had memorized. Do not call unless you must, had been written in his own hand. I nodded and dialed. Hola, who's calling? Demanded a familiar voice. What was Juanito doing with Don Clemente's phone? I wanted to hang up right then. I wanted to tell Juanito I knew what he was up to when he lent Elena the money. I wanted to tell him to go and leave. Instead, I just said, let me talk to Don Clemente. It's Miguel. A silence followed. Juanito, are you there? Are you there? I asked. I thought I heard him laugh. What do you want, Miguel? I thought, mi tío gave you everything you needed. Just put him on. I need to ask him something. I would not give Juanito the satisfaction of knowing what had happened to me, to us. Well, you have to ask me now, Juanito's voice was calm and cold. What do you mean? I asked, but I did not want to know the answer. Juanito did not answer. He let the silence hang. Don Clemente is dead, he finally answered. A traffic accident. Somehow his Mercedes went off the road, up on the mountain. It was tragic, really. He didn't sound like he thought it was a tragedy. So naturally, I am now in charge of this operation. All of his networks, the coyotes, the polleros, the merchandise, everything. If you want something, you will have to ask me, and I'm replacing his people with mine, with those loyal to me. I did not answer. I hung the phone on the hook quietly. With this conversation, the road back to San Jacinto was closed. I couldn't let Elena return by herself. She already owed Juanito money. He might decide that she owed him more than that. We had to go north with no clear plan and no one to count on. I took the money and split it right down the middle, half for Elena, half for me. I could not pretend I was her boss anymore. We bought food and a run-down motel room for one night. Elena sat on the edge of the sagging mattress and carefully sewed her money back into the lining of the bag. I could hide mine on my body. There was at least one good place. But who was I kidding? If someone wanted it, they would find it, no matter where I stuck it. The only thing I had left from the beginning of my trip was Abuelita's Virgen de Guadalupe medallion. With everything that had happened, I had forgotten all about it. I took it off and inspected the links in the chain, one by one. A couple of Abuelita's hairs still clung stubbornly to the necklace, as if part of her refused to be separated from La Virgencita. Abuelita believed in La Virgen's powers of protection and guidance. I just believed in Abuelita. I checked the clasp and put the medallion back around my neck. It had seemed feather-light before, but now the cool, smooth metal felt solid and weighty against my chest. They called it Mata Gente, the people killer. It was an ordinary freight train that passed through once a day, and it was the one way to get north without paying a peso. It had oil cars, rounded, sleek, and shiny, and open hopper cars carrying grain or scrap metal. Ladders ran halfway up the sides of the faded orange, yellow, and brown cargo cars. It was simple, they said. As the train slowed, you ran alongside, grabbed one of the ladders, and hopped on. Facile. Easy. Everyone told us how easy it was to hop on board the train, and everyone told us about the unlucky ones who did not make it. The ones who survived were all over town, broken and abandoned, but still living. They were everywhere. One, a woman they called Angelita, sat outside the shabby clinic telling her story to anyone who would listen. The train had cut off both of her legs, mid-thigh, when she lost her grip and fell beneath the wheels. She would have died if two others had not jumped off to drag her from beneath the train and stop the blood flowing from her limbs. Another, called Santos, wheeled himself clumsily through the Zocato, begging for money so he could return to his family in Honduras. He was paralyzed from the waist down, and all four fingers of his right hand were gone. They said that Santos was pushed off the train. Someone wanted his place on a ladder that already held five others. We were going to hop the Mata Gente anyway, I declared to Elena. We watched Santos steer his wheelchair toward the bus station. There were always people there willing to give up a peso or two out of guilt. They were getting out of here. Santos had to stay. Okay, Miguel, we're young and fast, right? Elena added. Maybe Santos was just too slow or something. I didn't remind her that we had no choice. We walked to the train yard in the early evening. A gentle breeze lifted up some scattered papers. Halfway there, Elena skipped, then hopped, then showed me just once how fast she could run. See, Miguel, she said, I can do it. I know, I yelled to her. Si puede. We will, Elena. Things had changed between us. I knew how it felt to be macho, to try to boss Elena around, to ignore her, to fight with her like I did in San Jacinto. Things felt different now, since Morales, since Comilo and Juanito. We crossed through the yard littered with sidetracked, broken-down freight cars. I put my car down to the track to listen for the train the way Chewy and Lalo and I used to do in San Jacinto. The hot, fat metal rail held no clues. I crawled up into one of the cars and pulled Elena up after me. Its big doors gaped open and we sat with our legs dangling down. From here, we could see the Mata Gente coming. We would have time to position ourselves and to get ready. In the near distance, a small group was making its way into the train yard. One of them pointed and gestured and moved his body along a track, as if he was shadowing a moving train. He loped, picked up speed, and grabbed an imaginary ladder. And then I heard a familiar voice talking nonstop to the others. See, this is how you do it, he instructed. You just run, and then hop right on. Look who's here, Miguel, Elena yelled, jumping down. Come on. Within seconds, Javier hugged Elena in a giant abrazo. He reached out to pull me into the circle. I felt myself resist, but Elena grabbed my waist and tugged me in closer. We made a triangle. Javi and Elena, the base, me floating loosely at the top. I knew I'd see you again. It is fate, really, Javi said. Javi's companion, a young couple, the woman pregnant, smiled at the reunion. Then they turned around and left, going back the way they came. They are scared of the train. I told them what to do, but who knows? Maybe they will try, maybe they won't, Javier said in one breath. Good thing you're leaving. I'm glad to get out of here myself, he continued. Morales stuck me in jail for a day. He never figured out I tricked him. Then he put me on the other side of the river. But just like I told you, here I am again. Javi seemed happy, even joyful, about tricking Morales and making it back. But his eyes were red and his face was drawn. He had not slept. I could see that. Within seconds, Javi put himself in charge. He took each of us by an arm and propelled us down the train tracks. We'll get the train down there. He pointed beyond the end of the yard toward the dense underbrush. It's better. I've checked it out already. The Federales swing through the train yard every now and then. We followed the tracks for several hundred meters. The grass on both sides was firmly packed down, evidence that many train hoppers had waited here before us. In the thick undergrowth beyond the grass, others had cut back the brush to make places to sleep or to hide. A dead campfire blackened the ground in one spot. A faint wisp of yellow smoke crept up from the center. A pack of yellow-eyed dogs emerged from the brush and wandered toward us, sniffing the ground. The leader eyed us boldly. I picked up a rock and flung it in his direction. Javi ran after the dog, screaming, "Go on! Get out of here!" I hoped the dogs weren't like the rats. Another bad omen.